All right, can you all see this?
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Cool. I'm going to be very awkward while driving today, so bear with me. We're the main goal for today is to do a connect wallet. Is that right?
Yeah.
Cool.
I think so.
Yep.
And generally just talking about the identity, like, yeah, auth structure. That was my understanding.
Sounds right.
Cool. So let me start up our server. Make sure this still works.
There it is. Haven't had a chance to do anything yet.
I put one in.
Oh, because I'm not.
All it said was your mom.
Wow. That's good.
I felt really good about it. And then I was like, no one else is going to see this, though. Because there's no feed.
Aliens in the future when they're doing digital archaeology.
Or they're already doing
download the IPFS node real quick. Sorry about that.
Yep. All good.
Yeah, culturally, if you understood our language, the like your mom thing, it might be a little confusing.
I don't know.
What about his mom?
It's just your mom.
I like this VS Code theme. It's very nice.
What about it?
Just looks very nice. Very calming.
Oh.
Is this the material one?
Like the theme?
Packages or
yeah.
Called Tokyo Night.
Oh, it's built in. Yeah. I think, maybe.
theme?
Might be. I don't remember. All right. So while IPFS loads, there we go.
Sure.
All right, so that's running.
I'm like totally not in that mindset.
Great.
That's looking great.
Yep. Cool. So I guess where should we start? There's a few different routes of going about this. There is traditionally where people start is just like, how do I integrate MetaMask into my website, which will lead you down a specific path that's very MetaMask, like unique to MetaMask. There is a open source package that I like to use everywhere called Web3 modal that does a little bit more. So you've probably seen a variation on this.
Yeah.
Like a little modal that pops open with a lot of different options. So Web3 modal makes that really easy. You just pass it some config options and it works in React or it works in non-React applications. And then I have a library or like a React hook that wraps around the Web3 modal in ZooStand, which is a state manager, so that you can like log in one component on your React app and have that like account be accessible across your entire React app without needing too much extra config. Basically just makes it really easy to use within React. So I don't know what makes the most sense. Like, should we start with like the most simple kind of abstracted version of it, or should we start with like the nitty gritty, like heavy on the config side of things?
To my understanding, the Web3 modal doesn't get us everything, right? You still need the interface on basically the React wrapper to actually get it to keep the state and stuff. Web3 modal is more just like the literally the thing that is loaded and the bindings, okay, to the wallets. Yeah. And then the MetaMask is just that, right? Like it would give us the internal bindings, but then no other wallets.
Right. Okay, so I guess let's start with this hook because it's just like the quickest way to get something on the page, and then it is just one file. So if we want to dive into what that file does, we can do that.
I think that would be perfect.
Yep.
Cool. Let me. Forget what the npm package is called. Go. All right, so I'm going to do a yarn add. All right, so that's installed. Now in Next.js, there are like kind of global layouts. So traditionally you'd put like a connect wallet kind of button inside a header unit that is persistent across all pages. So really quickly, I'll just like set something like that up, where we have a header in our, this is in the app TSX file, which is global. So that'll persist, it'll apply to every single page. And then this component that comes in here is basically the content of the page. So if you're looking at the right TSX file, that'll just be loaded in the component, and header will always be above it. So
like a template.
yeah, so let's just make sure that worked. So we got our little hello there. Maybe I should split these. Is that better?
Yep, perfect.
Cool. Now let's add a little bit of styling to it. And let me just make that the title for now. And give ourselves an empty button. It doesn't do anything yet. All right, so really quickly just mocked up the header there. Still pretty ugly, but we'll deal with it for now. So I'm going to import that package that I just installed. Use wallet. And now at the top of this file, I'm just going to do count, connect, and disconnect. Feel free to interrupt and slow down because I have a tendency to just kind of keep going, but this stuff is documented inside the README here as well.
Pretty clear
Actually,
so
let
far.
me just copy this over because that's already there. So basically, we're taking a few things from this use wallet hook. What the account is, which will return an address for the logged in user if they're logged in. Otherwise, it'll just be undefined. And then connect and disconnect are functions that do exactly what they describe. So the logic that I just copy pasted into here says if there is no account, this could also just be if account equals undefined. Show a connect button that says connect wallet. If otherwise, show a disconnect button that disconnects the wallet. So now let's go over here, save this, and let's see if that runs. Connect wallet. It's opening up my MetaMask. And now I'm logged in.
Sweet.
So if I want to quickly like console.log what the account is,
Okay.
you can see my account address pops up right there. If any of the text stuff is too small, by the way, let me know and I can zoom in.
So one
but-
question here, if you go just to root instead of /right, what do we have happen?
So that's there. This is inside the index. Go ahead, sorry.
Right, and I guess I was wondering if the state would be preserved, and if not, where that sort of disconnect is happening.
Right now, I to get to the homepage, I popped it into the URL bar, so that was a hard refresh. Here, what I could do is make this thing a link, so we can see what that actually looks like. And actually, maybe let's pop in a right link as well, so we can get to that page easily.
Yep.
Import link. Yeah.
Yeah. So Next.js has its own link component. We install that, and then let me toss in another one right now for getting to the right page. All right, that'll work for now. So that works. And then if I connect wallet here, I'm on the home page, I'm connected. If I go to the right page, this maintains state.
And I guess one more question. The second click of connect wallet, the reason it just happened without popping up MetaMask is because MetaMask was unlocked, and that was the only
Two
sort of blocker?
reasons. Yeah, so 2 reasons. So MetaMask locks itself anytime that you totally close your browser, and you have to re-enter your password at that point. And then the first time that you connect MetaMask to any specific URL, it requests a specific permission for that URL. But now that I've authenticated that once, I can just hit connect wallet, and because it's authenticated in the past, it'll just reconnect without pulling up the MetaMask again.
I see.
If I wanted to like switch accounts, then I would have to do that through the MetaMask interface where I'm hitting connect here, and then you can see I got a different address that I'm into here, and I can
Oh,
keep
and it
switching it.
actually pushes the event through all the way. Nice.
Yeah. Cool. So that's kind of the core of what we wanted to get done.
All right, shut her down.
We did it again.
I mean, we also added a top level nav, so bonus.
Yeah. 2 in 1.
Okay.
There's a couple other things that I
Wait, it
popped
was
into
really
the
that
README here
easy?
today. So, or go ahead.
It was really that easy. Yeah.
Yep.
Oh. I guess you did the hard work ahead of
I can show you what's inside that component, or inside the hook. So it's importing the Web3 modal library, which again does like most of the heavy lifting here, if not all. There is a library called ethers.js, which handles actual kind of translation for messages to the wallet. So essentially the wallet takes like JSON RPC, which is a very ugly but very standardized and like universal kind of format for API requests and like specific functionality requests. And it's formatted in a way that's very like forwards compatible. So you can make new functionality and it's not going to have to go and be rewritten as a communication channel. But that is very difficult to write and like very, very, tedious. So ethers.js is a library that kind of turns that into like a more simple interface for you. So you can say, like wallet.sign message, and it'll know what to do with that instead of you saying wallet.send and then writing a bunch of JSON manually. So that's what Ethers is. ZooStand is a state manager for React apps. What makes it nice is that you can put state into, you can write state from any component and read state from any component, and they will share state. So it gives you a really simple way of having global state, which is useful for things like authentication in this case. If a user is logged in, you want to be able to access that from any component easily. And then React is, go ahead.
Oh yeah, a quick question. Would that be like a preferred state manager for us to use throughout the rest of the project? Or how do multiple interact with each
It's
other?
definitely my favorite. I've used it on tiny apps and big apps. It's kind of like the nice Goldilocks solution in the React world for state management, where it's as simple as use state, which is like the hook that I think we touched on that last time. It was managing the input for our text field. And there is a heavier thing called Redux, which is a very prescriptive way of doing state management, but it takes a lot of like setup early on. And it's just like a very difficult mental model, relatively speaking. But ZooStand is kind of nice in the middle, very powerful, but it doesn't require much setup.
Sweet.
Cool. So use wallet is the function that we're importing here. And what it does is it reads the state that we set inside ZooStand for account, network, and provider. Network is just a chain ID. So every Ethereum style blockchain has its own chain ID. The Ethereum mainnet is 1, Rinkeby, which is the testnet, is 4, Goerli, which is another testnet, is 5. Polygon is I forget what, but Mumbai, which is the Polygon testnet, is 80,001. So there's like a wide range where people are just kind of like nabbing a chain ID and making it theirs. But it gives you a nice universal kind of way of communicating with the blockchain and specifying which one you want to talk to. Provider is the Ethers object that I mentioned earlier. So provider is what you're going to use when you want to actually sign a message or run a transaction, which I can get to in a second. And then it's just defining the connect in disconnect functions. The connect function just basically does the basic Web3 modal call of Web3 modal.connect, takes those values and sets them inside our Zoostand store. And then it sets up a few event listeners. So when I did the thing of the account change, what was happening there was just this event was being run that says, hey, take the new accounts that were there and set that inside of our Zoostand store. So pretty straightforward in terms of what it does, but then it unlocks like very simple use here in terms of just getting onboarded. So inside the README here, I put an example for how to sign a message. So this would pull open MetaMask with a message to sign on behalf of the user. So there's a simple way to actually see what this integration looks like. So maybe on the index page for now, I can temporarily pop this in, and then we can take it out, and I'll get rid of the H1.
Yeah, unpacking the whole signed message process would be good too.
Yep.
I have like a
Yeah.
Sure.
felt sense of it, but I have no idea what it's actually doing.
Yeah.
We'll be right back.
All right. Okay, so really quickly, what I just did here. Uh-oh. All right, so our Connect wallet is still inside the header where it was before, but now on the index page, I'm using wallet again. So because Zoostand is different components, when I update Connect wallet, or when I click on Connect wallet here and it connects there, in that component, it should update automatically here and change the state here. So nice and easy. So now the sign message button, what it's doing is just doing await provider.getSigner. GetSigner is something that you have to call anytime that you want to do something that requires confirmation from the user. It is kind of like a tedious thing that you have to do each time. And then sign message, there's a few different methods that you can do here, including like send transaction or sign a transaction, like various different things. Sign message is just kind of the easiest one. You just pass it a string. Let's see how it looks. In MetaMask, it'll pull open that string and you hit sign or cancel. So I'm gonna hit sign real quick. And what you'll see is that I'm console.logging that signature, which is sent back in response. And you get back this like very long, ugly looking hex code. This hex code is basically the string that I provided, hello exclamation point, now combined with a private key and run through some functions using my private key that's stored in my wallet. So what somebody can do now is run a function called verify message, which I don't know how to do here, which I can input the original string hello, and I can input the signature that I got, and it's going to spit back an address. And I can say, does that address match the address that is supposedly sending me this message? And if so, then I know that user is to that user. If not, no way to verify.
Yep.
Yeah. So
interesting.
Really quickly, I can set up like a manual thing here inside the example. I'm going to add ethers as well to our project here, so I can start importing functionality from there.
Is there like an equivalent metaphor in the real world here? Some sort of messaging or banking, or, you know, we don't need to get hung up on this. I'm just.
Yeah, no, I was searching for one as well, and
trying to think, yeah, nothing obvious.
Yeah, because it's slipping off my brain. I mean, I can kind of feel the functionality. Anyways, yeah, it's cool. I need to study.
So I'm just quickly doing this slash API example just so we can really quickly see what this does. Const address equals verify message. Is that right? Message and signature. Okay. Okay, so now on the signed message, I'm going to add something that hits that API endpoint that I just set up. And I'm going to make our message a variable here so it's easier to get to. And okay, so really quickly, what I did is in this new API endpoint, I am receiving a message, which is our hello, and a signature, which is that long string that I get back from MetaMask as part of the request. Then I'm running it through Ether's verify message function, which you just pass that message and signature to, and it's going to spit back an address that it says, this is the address that technically signed this message. So if the signature is wrong, or if it's fraudulent, you're not going to be able to get the actual signature back from the user that you expect. And then it's just returning a response with the address, which we'll get on the front end, and we'll log there.
It's like a message.
Where did that go? Cool. All right.
Feels
so
a little bit like two slides that you have to put over each other to like get the right thing through it. And if you don't have either, then you have nothing.
You just have garbledy garbles. Huh.
Mm.
All right. I got an invalid body error.
Is it? Do you need to specify the like key and value for the signature and message in the JSON, or it shouldn't matter?
So in JavaScript, there's shorthand. If the key is the same as the variable name, you can just do signature. So this is the same as this.
Gotcha.
Post headers content type.
The API endpoint accepts post requests by default.
Yep.
I have to specify.
It should. Yeah, it should. See, it seems like it's not even being called. This technically should be logging right here when it gets called. So I think there might be something wrong with my request. Yeah. Slash API slash example. Let me just rename it. Verify signature. Slash API slash verify signature.
Can you see what the outgoing request to the network panel looks like?
Oh yeah, good call. Invalid body.
Looks pretty valid.
Yeah.
Mm.
Right. Let me just restart the server. That might be what's happening here.
True.
Oh, yep.
Yep.
I wonder if
so-
Next has to update some sort of internal routing tables on API endpoint changes or something like
Might
that.
be. Ethers is also like a pretty complex library, so I wonder if it might have tripped up by doing the install there. But okay, so
Cool.
I'm going to do sign message again. Hit sign, and that's the signature, and then this is the address that gets spit back by by this backend API endpoint. So the address here, which we see when I hit connect wallet the first time, 0xA3B6, is the same as this one. So usually if you want to like authenticate, you just do like an equals equals and say, yes, this is a valid thing from that user. Because the reason that this is important is that MetaMask, it just spits out an account ID or the address. And if that's all you take in the backend, like if we had an API endpoint that was just looking at the address here, anybody can send any value to that on behalf of any other user, and there's no way to validate it. So the signature is essential for making sure that that request or any data that you want from that user is actually coming in from that user. So if there's something like private content, just having them log in through MetaMask and have the right account or have the right address shouldn't be enough. You should make them sign something before the backend delivers that content, just to make sure that it's actually them.
This is like a gate.
Yes. So you sign in and then you do like a confirm.
Proof. Yeah.
Proof.
Yeah.
So yeah, like I'm trying to think of, yeah. Okay, that makes a lot of sense.
Okay, so just the one thing I'm hazing on is you're essentially saying it's still possible to spoof the communication between our front end and back end to basically say, hey, MetaMask returned us this address back. And in order to get around that, we need to have the front end independently contact MetaMask, generate the signature, then send that back. And only then do we have only the information that they could have given us.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yep. Cool.
Yeah,
I never thought about that.
That's
Makes a lot of sense.
That's useful for something like, verifying that user is logged in and potentially surfacing content for them. For something like writing a transaction to the blockchain, you don't have to manually do the signature because the wallet's doing that internally.
Yep.
So that there's no extra step there for a verification message or anything like that.
Right. So this kind of gets actually, I guess at the beginning of the video, I was just like, oh, okay, so we just like stick author hyphen like Ethereum address, right? But then this kind of gets to the same question. Anybody could do that. Anybody can essentially say, write a block with this address, and then all of a sudden somebody else wrote this block. So do you have like thoughts on how, I guess, given our address and our signature and our block data and the fact that we have a front end and a back end component, what travels where in what order?
So everything right now we're storing on IPFS. So it's just loose file storage, but there's no permanence to it, no organization to it. Like it's all just kind of lost in the IPFS world. So I think to answer that question would be to also figure out the next step there of like, are we deploying a contract that manages some kind of storage for these IPFS URLs? An NFT is literally just a token ID, which can be incrementing from 0 to whatever number, and an IPFS hash. And that's essentially what most NFTs are, is that IPFS hash goes to some metadata JSON somewhere, which then also references another image or something. But yeah, like NFTs sound like they're explained in such complicated ways sometimes of like, oh, it's a digital signature and it's a puzzle that somebody had to solve. And it's like, no, it's really just a database record pointing to an IPFS URL. But it's just going through the blockchain system.
And can you go a little more into what that contract would look like?
Sure. Yeah, it seems so. Open Zeppelin is an organization that kind of does the gold standard for like starting points or jumping off points for smart contracts. They invest heavily in auditing their stuff. They work very deliberately and slowly on shipping standard contracts that anybody can can use and update. They recently put in a wizard that really shows how easy some of this stuff can be.
That's cool.
Yeah, so ERC20 is the currency-like token standard. Every token is like any other token. So this is what like a Dogecoin kind of style thing would be.
Yep.
ERC 721 is NFT. So this is probably closer to what we're thinking right now, because we want each thing to be referencing some specific IPFS URL. ERC 1155 is like a magical combination of those two things, but not as well supported in the ecosystem. So Etherscan, Polygon Scan, OpenSea, those things don't yet have good support for this. So ERC 721, you can see this is a complete contract here that could be deployed. So there's some features that we can enable here. So mintable means that we can have a public API call or an API endpoint called SafeMint that anybody can call, or actually in this case, only the owner, the deployer can call it. This is actually not great. For our use case, this isn't perfect, but it kind of shows how modular and like easily these things can come together.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think maybe like the post that I had done for like the Space 10 thing might be a good reference here.
The key is that everything is reusable.
You probably go to your profile.
Yeah,
Find
that's a
it
good call.
Yeah.
Just really organized really well though.
Mhm.
Best blog out there.
Oh, that's right. Yes, this amazing post.
Shahruz is like,
So
yeah,
in here,
a couple months ago.
I mean, this is like
Everybody.
one function that we might be able to take. But yeah, so like basically you're just writing these functions that become public API. I can zoom in. Everybody's like leaning in very closely.
It's also super interesting. It's
yeah.
both. Yeah.
So anybody can write a function within a Solidity contract. If it's marked public, it can be called, through ethers, for example. You can just do like contract dot update space and then pass it a couple variables and it'll know how to do that. In this case, we don't need all this much. We basically would just need something that accepts an IPFS hash and then says create a new token and store that IPFS hash there along with it.
Mm.
Should we just try to write one?
Sure.
Yeah.
I think
All
so.
Remix.ethereum.org is a web editor that's like officially supported by whatever ethereum.org is. I'm still not totally understanding how their infrastructure works or organization works.
Some foundation structure there. I need to
Seems-
read all this stuff.
seems like
Yeah.
that, yeah.
Same.
So I was digging around their like documentation blog thing, and it was like surprisingly well organized and clear and just beautiful. They are on top of their publishing.
Guess go buy more Ethereum then.
Okay, so I'm just cleaning out a remix workspace here and then making a brand new file. Honeycombs.sol. And then just copy the boilerplate. All right, so we've got an empty contract. This does absolutely nothing. This is just a license. This is what version of the compiler that we want to use. Usually you don't need to worry about this. And this is just defining what the name of our contract is. We should start with Open Zeppelin because we know we want to do ERC 721. So go to the ERC 721 page. Use the wizard.
Why did you say the 1155 wasn't well supported? Is it just because it's newer?
For the most part, yeah.
Yeah.
And like I think for all these companies, they have to, prioritize. And I think just because there's so much more activity around ERC 20 and 721,
Yeah.
that they just have to kind of like keep building towards that. But I think everybody loves ERC 1155, so I think it's just a matter of time.
Who's the company behind Minecraft?
Mojang. Well, now Microsoft.
Microsoft, yeah.
It used to be Mojang, AB.
Maybe I'm thinking of someone else. There's a game company that's been like heavily, I guess, researching and working on using 1155 because the gaming like industry, like it makes sense that you would have some non-fungible token, like, you know, you're earning different like weapons or outfits or costume, whatever, like in the game, but then it's also interchangeable with outside, like with actual like financial currency in game and out game actually. So there's some like fungible
it'd be
in game, but then having an interface with the outside world too. I don't know. It's interesting to me.
Yeah, it's cross-market compatibility.
Yep.
it looks like GDC has a talk by Age of Rust, by Engine about this, but there may be multiple, but I absolutely see like an application in NFTs in video games, like collectible items actually become collectible.
Yep.
As opposed to getting stuck.
There's all sorts of community stuff too, of like if like characteristics about your player that you've been developing are public, you know, people can make a forum that says, hey, this is only for people of this class or within this specific group or players of this type or whatever. In picturing like an MMO or something.
I did not think about that at all.
Or like if a forum just wanted to support, you know, everybody that's playing that game, they could import their character profiles and have cool kind of badges and, you know, visualizations associated with it. All sorts of cool stuff.
It's so fucking wild.
I'm missing something here.
What are you missing?
I don't know.
What's confusing or what's like pinging you?
I'm probably not thinking about it right. We'll just keep going. I'll pick it up. Yeah.
All right. Yeah. Let me know if you have a question.
Anything unique.
Yeah. So
can be
anything
encoded.
unique. So in the case that you were just talking about with the communities, what is being encoded in the thing?
Like their personas, like the sort of
Hair color, mastery level of this game type.
Yeah, all that
sword.
all that makes sense. And then you were saying like in relationship to like there's a community. What I missed something in there.
So okay, so let's say right now you're playing like Destiny 2 or something. And, I forget who makes that, but whoever makes it, it's all on their closed servers, right? The character profiles, everything about that. So if I'm just like super into Destiny, I have limitations on what kind of cool stuff I can build for the community. Whereas if that stuff was on chain and publicly accessible, I could go and build anything for any game and have it be really like in the universe and like, you know, feeling integrated. People could be able to bring their profiles into it easily.
It's a cross-market thing, right? It's
exactly.
Game cross everything, like you know, it's back to it moves the ownership back to the individual, and they can move through any environment. So that pattern plays out with all, and then this thing supports because it's fungible and it's non-fungible. Got it. Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Okay.
There was a metaphor in a tweet. I remember, I forget who posted it, but it said something along the lines of like a wallet is like your infinite backpack on the internet. Where you can store a whole bunch of different like items and stuff. And some of those things can be keys to other things. Some of those things can be like identity related things that you can transfer across apps and games or whatever.
That's a nice way to put it.
This is why everybody's building wallets. Everybody's gonna need one. Got to store all your loot in it.
Okay, I like bags. Let's do it.
I know.
You can create a wallet for social something. I'm curious, like I need to understand better, like how the bags, if you will, are being designed. Like and why you would need a different wallet for different things. I mean,
start from the bottom up here. You'll know why.
Yeah, I mean it makes sense. Like we've been buying a lot of bags to organize all of our like nomading stuff, and just making sure things are like, it makes sense. Like we need a bag for food stuff that's like this. We need a bag for like toiletry things that's designed, it's like specific too. And like, I don't know, it's cool. I like that crosswalk because I'm in the bagging world right now. I bought so many bags in the last week.
Bag for your bags.
I'm gonna have so many wallets.
Cool. So I've just copied in the basic stuff from the wizard here.
Mhm.
So we can rename this. So this would be the name of the token. So like in OpenSea, you would see this as like the title of a collection, for example. And then this would be the symbol. So like you typically see a $ in front of it. But again, like because all this stuff is just like standards, and then every platform has its own ways of interpreting that and displaying it. It's like usually you don't see people using the $ thing in front of NFTs for the contract. It's the NFT itself that you're buying or selling. So yeah, some of this stuff ends up not mattering at all. But so the yeah, what should we name like our token?
So I mean, this is something that like honeycombs comprise of, maybe?
Honey. That's what goes in the honeycombs.
$honey.
HNY.
What'd you say, CJ?
HNY.
HNY.
Happy New Year's.
New Year's token.
I'm wondering if the specific six-sided hexagonal cell has a name, like a, but I don't think so.
Best
Or
can be hexa.
Yeah, that's what I just wrote down.
like hex.
Or hex.
Hex seems like a curse.
Hex seems like a curse.
So hexa, you know, it doesn't mean anything. But it's
we can always change it later too. Should we just go with hexa?
Yeah,
Sure.
hexa is fine for now.
Hex is nice. Yep.
Sounds like open territory. We can conquer the market with hexa.
Cool. So this is a full ERC 721 contract. But right now, if I were to deploy this, it would never be able to mint anything, and it would just be empty forever because it just has no functionality. The ERC 721 standard.
Hey, Shahruz, one question.
Yeah.
How do you upgrade contracts? Like, is there like a certain way of doing this? I know this is kind of jumping ahead. It just like struck me as like, say you deployed that right now on testnet or mainnet. How do you go back and change that?
So by default, you can't do that. That's the default. Most contracts don't support it, and that's a security measure for the most part. So if you've got some hot, coin that's got some tokenomics or whatever associated with it, which is what most people are using this stuff for nowadays, it's a huge sign of you can't trust this if your contract is upgradable.
Yeah.
However, for things like what we're working on here, like upgrades are probably more reasonable because it's not a financial asset. It's like a protocol, a service. It makes sense for new functionality to be added in. And you can probably trust the protocol creator or deployer or maintainer to be updating in good faith, as opposed to updating for the sake of a rug pull. Like there's no way to withdraw millions of dollars this way and screw over people that invested money, because that's just not what this contract is like doing.
Okay.
So with upgrades, it's not built into Solidity. It's a bit of a hack that OpenZeppelin pioneered, where you're essentially doing proxy contracts. So you're saying the main contract address is a certain thing that you deploy, but all that's doing is proxying to another address, and then you can update that proxy with a new address anytime you want.
Yeah. Okay.
So that's the way you do upgrades. Yeah.
That proxy slot, does it behave differently than a regular contract, or is it something that has dynamic variables within it somehow? Like, I guess I'm still wondering how they, like, it feels like they just moved the problem.
It's a little bit of both. With upgrades, you have some rules that you have to kind of do things a specific way. For example, if you have storage, if you're defining variables at the top of the contract, those have to stay in the same order. And if you add new variables, you can only add them to the bottom of the list. So there's some like kind of things that you have to look out for in that sense. Because what they're doing is essentially like a very rudimentary, lightweight kind of thing of like copy the storage from version A into version 1 into version 2, so that the proxy doesn't need to rethink like what it's doing. The storage is just copied over.
Got it. Wow. A solution for a problem I didn't know existed.
There's all these little pockets.
It's I mean, it's crazy because you can spend so much time on just the Open Zeppelin site, just getting like the fundamentals.
Yeah.
And there's still so much more to like learn and explore constantly.
Do you know like what the Open Zeppelin story is at all? Not to get too off track here. I'm just
No, I haven't looked into it. I should definitely do that because they're a hugely valuable resource.
Yeah, it seems super cool. So it would be interesting to see how they got together to do this. Yeah, cool.
Cool. So this contract right now doesn't do anything. It's just an empty ERC 721. On Open Zeppelin, they have a page here that shows you all the different functionality that comes baked into ERC 721. So all these different functions are just tucked away into this import that we have up here. So you can see one of them is _mint. Underscore is a convention for a private call, meaning it's not public by default. Whereas something like this, like get approved or approve, set approval for all, these are functions that anybody can call from the outside already. But because we're writing our own contract, what we can do is write a function that's called mint, make it public, and then call that private function from within it. And this basically creates a public version of that API that we can put rules into, or we can set additional logic into here. The mint function takes two parameters, an address to send it to, and a token ID, which is a number that can be extremely long, up to 256 bits. For the address, if we wanted to just mint it to whoever the uploader was, message.sender is how you do that in Solidity. So what this will do is it'll take whoever called it and give you the address for that account. And then token ID, I'm just going to put in 0 for now, but I will show how to do that in a second, where we can set up an incrementing counter for token IDs.
Yeah, I was trying to map out how that incrementing counter would work, and I'm very curious because.
Does this all make sense so far?
Yeah, so far pretty clear.
Yeah, so actually with the incrementing counter, just a question in advance, is that something that Solidity itself or like Ethereum has defined, or is that again, Open Zeppelin has implemented the incrementing counter?
Open Zeppelin.
Got it.
But the code is very straightforward, so we can dive into that too. But Open Zeppelin basically has this counters utility, or yeah, I mean, all these things are contracts that you're also importing, but some of them only have kind of utility functions like this. So I'm going to import the counters contract here, and then we should be able to open it up too. Okay, so this is counters, the inside of the counters.sol file that Open Zeppelin creates. So if you ignore all the comments, you can see it's a struct counter, which is just like a JavaScript object. It's something that has a property that's called dot or underscore value, and it defaults to 0. So counter dot underscore value would be 0 by default. It has a current function, which is internal, meaning you can call it from inside the contract, but it's not going to create a public API endpoint for this. Meaning, even though this is baked into our contract, nobody from the outside is going to be able to call like dot current and get a value back because it's marked as internal. What that does is just returns the underscore value, which again defaults to 0. It has an increment function, which just does a plus equals 1, and it has a decrement function, which has a -1, but makes sure that the value is greater than 0. And it has a reset, which sets the value to 0. So even like the Open Zeppelin utility stuff, pretty straightforward, just like a lot of things that you would, it'd be tricky to set up the first time the right way, but reading it, you can grok it pretty easily.
Yep.
Okay, just one question though. Where is this value stored? Because that I am still like trying to grok.
So the contract is also the storage, always. That's part of what makes everything so secure, is that there's no database that somebody can just go into and change things around in. The contract itself is a storage. So every time that contract is called, the previous, like it's just updating constantly.
Oh, so okay. So in other words, the contract is solid state, but only the variables get piped in, and it's just dumping value to chain every time. But
Yep.
this is still, I guess, maybe a better phrasing is like, what is the relation between these two contracts? Are they side by side? Are they on two separate chains? Is one the parent of the other? I guess, like, what is an import in terms of one contract to another?
So import is just importing. It's essentially doing, if I were to copy paste this down here. So that's what it's doing by default. When you see is at the top of a contract, what that's doing is sort of like a class inheritance or a class extension. So it's saying, hey, this honeycombs is everything that ERC 721 is, plus everything that we put into here. And then inside the constructor, we're passing in things that the ERC 721 constructor needs to initialize. So these will never change in the case of an ERC 721. But this is basically the syntax for if you're inheriting a contract and it has a constructor that needs certain variables as input, you just pop it at the end of the constructor thing. But if let's say we wanted just like an arbitrary, actually let's do like a counter before we implement the Open Zeppelin one, just like a quick and dirty kind of version of it. So counter uint 256 is just the default for anytime we want to use a number value. And counter is just the name of our counter. I'm going to put an underscore in front of it so it's private, or sort uses the same convention as a private variable. And then in mint, I'm going to say instead of 0, use our counter. So by default, the first time this is called, it's going to use 0. The next time it's called, it's still going to use 0 because we're not incrementing our counter yet. Right. So what I can do here is just counter plus equals 1.
Yep.
And I think that would be the full thing there. Counters gives you, like, what Open Zeppelin is doing with their utilities is giving you also decrement functionality with like checking to make sure it's always positive. So there's more safeguards in here, but because we're only ever incrementing, this should suffice.
Yeah, and I guess somebody who's seen like a Zeppelin function before can just instantly be like, okay, like I know what it does. I don't need to like verify all that code, and just like it's just like using a popular library instead of re-implementing.
Yeah. Yep. So okay, so that's like the quick and dirty version of what counters is doing. There's one other thing that we need here, which is storing the IPFS hash for each thing. Because right now it's just basically saying anybody can call mint. It mints them a thing that's essentially empty, and then plus equals 1 so that the next person gets the next one. ERC 721 has an extension called Uri Storage, which basically says for each token ID, we can store a string that is a URI or a URL. So if I import that, actually before I import that, let's do the quick and dirty version ourselves. So string, mapping from uint 256 to string token URIs. So a mapping is just saying for any uint 256 input, it will have a string output, and that string output will default to an empty string. So this is just storing arbitrary data for us that we can set. So for any number, we can assign a string. So what we can do is inside of our mint function, let's start accepting an IPFS hash as a parameter. So anytime somebody calls it now, they'll need to include an IPFS hash. And right before we mint, let's set that value for the current counter to be the value that was passed in.
Wow.
So now it's storing it, but it's still private. So what we need is a public function that says token URI, and it accepts an ID or a token ID public, and then returns the value for that token ID.
And what would token URI be called by? the user implemented, or I guess the functionality implemented by us, right? Or anybody else, but in other words,
Exactly,
anybody, okay.
by us, but because token URI is like a standard interface, essentially, the standard API call. So OpenSea is using this exact call when they say, give me the information for a certain NFT.
Okay, so it's kind of like the default like read function.
Yeah. Yep. So again, like I just did the quick and dirty version of this. There's all sorts of safeguards that OpenZeppelin implements that is the right way of doing this, but just wanted to give you guys an understanding of how it actually works behind the scenes. But you can see there's some extra functions that they pop in by default that are convenient.
So you can actually update the URI, it seems, as well, right?
Not by default. So right now, the only entry points here, like the only entry points are the ones defined in the contract.
Right.
So right now, the only thing you can call is mint, which will take that IPFS hash, mint something and increment the counter. If we want to do an update, let's do like update token, for example.
Take some token ID.
Needs a token ID, and it needs a new hash.
Yeah.
And then it's essentially just this, but with the token ID instead.
Yeah.
And now you've got update functionality.
And you probably want to verify that token ID exists or something like that.
Yep. So like, again, some of these things are what OpenZeppelin builds in. And then you also want to make sure it's like the right user that owns it that's updating it.
Yep.
So a lot of these things OpenZeppelin built in, but what we could do is ERC 721 comes built in with this owner of function. So what we can do here is require. So require is a statement within Solidity that you can say, you can basically give it a true or false value or something that resolves to a true or false value, and then a message that it errors out with if that comes back false. So we can say we need message.sender to be the same as owner of token ID. And if not, we say, wrong owner or whatever the error message is, not yours.
Kind of like assert, just a little more
exactly.
specific.
So like OpenZeppelin will have a whole bunch of these things in here that are kind of like the obvious defaults that you would need. But then we're able to extend that with whatever logic and rules that we want to apply. But all of it basically boils down to simple statements just like this. No matter how deep into OpenZeppelin code you go, it's just very like straightforward and pretty parsable once you get a sense of the syntax.
And just to double check, owner of is being imported from the base 721 contract, or do we need another import? Okay. Yeah,
so ERC 721 just has owner of by default. Cool. What's really cool about this stuff is so EIP 721 is where this started. So this was all a proposal. It was, hey, what if we structure things this way? So these folks put together this proposal, basically defined, motivation, and then defined like, here's all the things that we think that the ERC 721 should include by default. And they didn't include the implementation. They just said, here's the functions that something should be able to respond to be considered in ERC 721. I think they put together some initial implementation of it, but OpenZeppelin is who created the kind of reference implementation at this point for it. But it's interesting to see that this stuff started off as just like, hey, what if we standardize, ways that we structure our data and ways that data can be queried and interfaced with. Which is, I mean, that's such a revolutionary kind of way of doing things.
Fucking incredible.
Yeah, makes perfect sense. It's cool.
So yeah, you can see here like this metadata extension, which is optional, is what includes this token URI function that we basically just did our own implementation of.
What's an application of a base token without the metadata extension? Is there one that comes to mind? Or just do most end up having metadata? Most
of them end up having metadata because they're primarily being used as NFTs for the most part in terms of like what I've been looking at publicly. But besides that, I think like if you wanted to do something like licensing where, you know, each thing didn't necessarily need to have, you know, its own like image or its own metadata associated with it, but it could just be like, I'm going to make 100 of these. Maybe each one has its own different permissions or has some unique set of permissions. And then if the account owner holds that,
you just pass
then
them around. Got it.
Like an IOU or something?
I think more like an access card, sort of. That can't be duplicated.
But like
So
instead of like paying for Sketch and now you've got a license fee, you could have an NFT that you can like resell to somebody, for example. It wouldn't make sense for Sketch, but
yeah, but there's definitely software. You could be like 100 copies, y'all bid for whatever you want. I mean, it's evil, but it's effective.
I mean, there's probably games you can use this with. Yeah, like a key, and then you can sell the key. Yeah, interesting, cool.
Yeah,
amazing. Thank you. It's making a lot of sense. Definitely.
Cool. So there's a little bit of syntax here that I missed out. So public returns. That doesn't return anything. This one does. So Remix also, when I hit save, it has all these like nice warnings and stuff. Data location must be memory. So this is just like, I forget all this stuff all the time. I don't have to manually come back and do it. Basically, anytime you have a string inside an argument, you have to include where that string is stored, and memory is typically what you want to do. Call data is another option, but it's a lot more restrictive. There is a gas cost difference in these two things, but they're relatively negligible. And if you're on Polygon, it's you can totally ignore it essentially.
This is the computer thing. Interesting. Yeah, that makes sense. It's got, okay. And then there's a cost to doing the compute. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. It's kind of weird as you're going through this, Shahruz. It reminds me a lot of like programming C for the internet in a way.
Yeah, where it's like you're working with super low fundamentals because you see like how they are interfacing with the atoms, except in this case it's bandwidth and execution costs.
Yep. There's I never reference this because it would just drive me crazy. But there's like a way for each, basically every single like function or command that you can run within Ethereum, there is like an associated cost. So a lot of places that are like on Ethereum and are more conscious about this might be like budgeting, you know, ahead of time what their contract gas fees should be, and then trying to optimize it to be within that. But yeah, there's some dictionary somewhere that's like for each thing.
Oh, I see. Holy shit.
Wow.
Trying to find where it actually is.
Wait, so now wait, I think like is Polygon basically saying we're gonna run the like EVM outside of the blockchain and just give you the result and then basically like negate the fee, or how is it working?
Polygon's difference is that they're using proof of stake as a proof of work. So Ethereum just by default has all these extra computations that are being run just for the sake of making it difficult. Polygon just doesn't do that. Like these things are not running an insane amount of transactions relative to what like Web 2.0 services might be dealing with. So for Polygon, they can have a network that's like all AWS servers that anybody can join into and just run it efficiently because there's not that much throughput that's needed. And when it is needed, they can just kind of scale up because there will also be more demand for it. But it's the key difference here is proof of stake versus proof of work. So hopefully Ethereum sees these pricing improvements, within a year or so as well, as they've been saying.
Okay.
And this is the work being done with some of the proof of stake ETH2 layer stuff, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so Polygon is the current way of getting this, but eventually this should just be native and built in.
Exactly. Yeah. So I think like all of this stuff, like gas will still be gas. It will just be way cheaper. But gas is essentially a measurement of how much work that function call is doing, and then pricing it automatically for that.
Yeah, I
Which
guess
is-
I
it's
like,
clever, yeah.
yeah, I imagine there was a mapping, but I didn't realize it was so like defined down to the just wow, like literally a spreadsheet.
Yeah,
I think,
that's so
like,
funny.
With serverless functions, it's like it's a factor of how much memory you're allocating and how long that function took to execute. And like
Mhm.
this is neither. It's like literally like
Yeah.
every single operation that you're running. You know,
Yep.
if you want to add two things, that's going to be three gas that's added to your thing.
This is crazy. Like this is like, I mean, it's so funny. It reminds me of like literal CPU. Like it is like basically like a literal CPU that they've defined.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And the this is the assembly code on top of it.
That's what I was going to ask. Like, what is the level of this? Like, it's above binary, but not by much. Like,
Yeah.
Assembly.
yeah, that's crazy. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's like Solidity is getting essentially compiled down into this assembly, and then from there they're determining the gas cost or something. And I think that's why I was thinking like this is like C, because they're literally taking it in terms of you're doing the memory management, you're doing all the things that you might be doing in C, and then it is like portable assembly, so it's just getting translated into assembly very cleanly. So I guess like there are different languages other than Solidity, like more based on Python or something like that. So it'll be interesting to see kind of at least what gets built on top of this, because this is so new still.
Yeah.
Wow.
There's even like I've seen, because IPFS hashes are always, I think, 34 characters, and string is relatively expensive for storage because it can have an arbitrary length and it can go very long. So an optimization that a lot of people do is that in Solidity there's a native bytes 32 type, which is just 32 bytes of anything. So they can be 32 characters, but IPFS uses 34 characters. But the first two characters just define what version of IPFS is being used.
Yep.
So there's a technique that like a lot of like the higher throughput contracts are using, where they're storing IPFS hashes in bytes 32 instead of strings to save on gas, and then just like storing the version of the IPFS hash elsewhere, because that can be stored into like a uint 256 because it's just two characters or something. There's like all sorts of crazy optimizations, but like I always like starting with like string because that's what I know, and I'm trying not to like. I think like optimization is a step that you can keep coming back to as opposed to writing that way.
The L2 stuff, will that matter anymore either? Like, or will it matter less?
I think it all depends on throughput and what the real cost would be. Because Ethereum also, like, people are incentivized for the price to go up on Ethereum.
Yeah.
So there's a bit of a tension there. And I think Polygon is starting at a much lower, it's like 75 cents for a Polygon token or whatever right now. So it's just like, they're not necessarily aiming to be a $2,000 or $3,000 token.
Yeah.
So I think, nobody knows, because if they knew for sure, it would be affecting the prices of everything right now. So it's
Okay. Yeah. I mean, there's like larger market implications there that like I hadn't. Well, it makes sense that they all connect, but this is an interesting connection point.
Yeah, I mean, I do think that for Ethereum to really, scale to like 1 billion people, where like average people are using it, the costs do need to be a lot more like Polygon.
Definitely.
I mean, especially if you want to do anything like decently complex and silly, like there has to be wiggle room here so that you're not burning gold all the time.
Right.
That's going to keep people at bay from doing anything that's actually interesting at scale. So, okay. Yeah, that makes sense.
I mean, it costs like, I don't know how much gas, but it costs gas to put a URL and like your Twitter handle to associate with your wallet. And I mean, it was enough for me to be like, yeah, I'm not doing that right now. I don't want to pay for that.
Yeah.
And that's like nothing. Yeah, at scale.
It's a perfect example. Like that operation needs to be free or so cheap that it's meaning like essentially free.
Okay. I mean, that's a good like sort of measure of where we are in the maturity of this thing.
Yep.
Like it costs X amount for, encoding something like this, like, and it's in the dollars and that comes down to pennies or fractions of pennies or whatever, which, you know, it sounds like it's getting in that direction rapidly, like it's exponential. Yeah, you're just going to keep getting unlocks and possibilities here. So wild. Cool.
Well, this is gonna be crazy.
Oh yeah.
It's kind of nice though that there's a cost built in,
Yeah.
because there's an awareness then that things cost
Yes.
something, like there's friction, which is, there's a greater awareness of what is happening, like there's something happening. You have to pay for this, whereas I don't know, just in the real world, so many things are seemingly free, but we're paying for it somewhere. You
Yes.
just can't see the cost. So, and I'm sure
Well, this
things
is
will
the
get
contracts.
streamlined, so
Yeah.
you won't necessarily see the costs up front, but at least now, I don't know,
It could be explorable at least.
tangible and good.
Well, yeah, there's a connection to the thing you're making and like the resources it's consuming and how it's doing that. And you can see that there are efficiencies possible to make the thing more fluid or whatever.
Yep.
Like that just feels good to work within. Yeah, like
In
it's
the-
a car you can work on.
The default of having the users pay for the service to run as opposed to the creator, really it changes like so much of the dynamics of
whole
like how you
relationship.
create. Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah, and well, if you make those things the same thing, those two groups of people, you're the creator and user as a group, then you can tend towards like a synthesis optimization there. That's like, you know, the right amount of expenditure towards the thing that you're attempting to do, but with as much efficiency as necessary to keep the thing running well. So
Yep.
Yeah, that pattern is the same one as the ERC 11, whatever what is. Yeah.
Yeah, 55.
You know, best of both worlds synthesis thing. Cool.
Cool.
All
So real quick, Remix has these other tabs. I recommend playing around in Remix for a little bit, but it has these other tabs, excuse me, where you can compile it. And if it'll compile, it's a good sign because it means it didn't fail. And then you can deploy it either to like a VM that runs right within this Remix environment. So I can just do select honeycombs and then hit deploy. And now it's deployed in an instance that's just inside my browser. And then I can run Mint. You know, let's put in a fake IPFS hash that's not real. I can run Mint, and then down here you can see like it ran that function. And then if I want to do owner of 0, which is theoretically what our token ID should be, you should see my address here, which is the same one as up here that I'm interacting with. So this gives you like a full playground to like, you know, this is basically all of your public API endpoints. You can just call and query and see how they work. And then if you want to deploy it to like a real network, you just do like injected Web3, which is your MetaMask, connecting that for the first time here. And then you can deploy it to whatever network you're connected to in MetaMask. So right now I'm on Rinkeby, but if I wanted to change that to the mainnet, I can deploy it to the mainnet through here as well. Same thing for Polygon, like it's just adding in the right network into this list. So Remix lets you do a whole lot, like without needing to set up any local environment at all.
And once you have your target environment and network specified, clicking deploy is basically going to like ask you to pay for. Yeah. Okay. Wow.
Yeah. So I mean, I can hit confirm here and then just not confirm it in here.
So
So yeah, that would cost me $64 right now.
Whoa. This is why it's too expensive.
Yeah, that's not cheap. It's a night out.
So keep playing on the testnet.
Yeah, testnets are all free, and then Polygon, this would be like, you know, a cent.
Yeah.
Wow.
Okay. Interesting. So one thing you mentioned earlier in our Discord is that signatures operate cross-chain. Okay, that was for some reason like not at all evident to me prior. What does that mean about something like this? So does that mean like this could be deployed at least for now on a test network, and yet still quite a bit of the functionality like transfers over to I guess wherever anybody's interacting it from, with it from.
Yeah, so I think like a big UX target was to not require people to like figure out what other networks to switch to, especially for Polygon, which is like you'd have to paste it in manually. So I just wanted to like avoid that as best as possible.
Yep.
And then because the plan is to charge for film up front, where it's like 50 cents per photo or something, you know, reasonable, but that could cover upcoming costs for those transactions that are related to that. So what we're doing is we've implemented they're called meta transactions. So what this does is it can accept a standardized version of here's all the transaction that I want to run as a user. But instead of me running it directly, I'm going to sign that message. And then the backend server is going to take that signed message and then forward it to a contract, which is a minimal forwarder, where it can execute that. So basically what's happening is a user, because I don't want them to have to pay for the gas themselves or think about switching to Polygon or anything like that, they just sign the message. I take that signature, send it to an API endpoint, which then just forwards it to a contract. And that contract is what pays for that transaction to be run, whether it's posting a photo or claiming film. In our case, it could be you could be uploading a post or updating one. But yeah, there's this extra hop in here of like the user as a Polygon UX improvement and as a way to pay on their behalf. The user only ever signs messages. They don't run transactions directly on the chain. But it's uncommon because most people are still shipping apps to Ethereum and expecting them to pay for each transaction themselves.
Which involves basically, in other words, you right now that gives you the power to set the price to 50 cents. If you were trying to deploy on Ethereum mainnet, that would be like trying to target a Blizzard. Like you would just have no idea where to even price that.
Yeah.
Got it. So it's essentially like an executor proxy. Okay. Yeah. So it seems like not super critical, I guess, in the application of like publishing blocks per se, but it is a pattern for moving the source of payment around to fit like the use case better.
Yep. Because there's basically a version without this would mean that, let's say that it's deployed on an Ethereum testnet, it would mean that you have to, in MetaMask or Rainbow or whatever wallet you're using, you'd have to switch to that network first. And then you have to pay for it with, Rinkeby testnet coin, which is free, but it's still a bit of a hassle to like
extra steps
acquire that. And
totally.
So I'm curious, is this like one reason for a DAO potentially is like having the funding like through the DAO? So the DAO is now the one who's really maintaining and like actually paying for things.
Yeah.
A treasury that I think one of the nice things about like the camera setup right now is that there is a point where we can accept money from people, and it's a reasonable point at which to ask for that money. And I think there's a reasonable price point where like 50 cents to $1 per photo in this world is like such a cheap amount relative to, minting on Zora or Foundation or something. But the idea is basically to like model it out so that that money goes to a treasury, and then we keep a minimum in there that guarantees that, we'll be able to keep this stored for a long time. And then the rest can be allocated towards people building on it or funding projects that people want to build and, externally that use the protocol, like all sorts of DAO treasury management kind of stuff there. But with or without funding, I think there is a treasury aspect to this.
Yeah.
Whether it's just accumulating the fees or taking funding somewhere.
Yeah, then all the distribution. Yeah. This is a fun one. It's cool.
There's a lot of like small aspects, and it seems like there's a lot of teams working on different aspects too. And you can kind of just start gluing them together. It's really interesting.
It's beautiful because it's like it's what GitHub and open source have been doing so effectively for so long, but now there's more standards that people are accepting more quickly. So everything is so much more composable and like pluggable into other things. Whereas even GitHub, as like utopian as it is, like that environment and the stuff that people build for it, there's not like compatibility in every direction. Like there's a lot of people rewriting the same thing over and over again. And here it's early enough that like like this is still the first like on-chain like you know, tools for thought, note taking, note management, like all this stuff. I still haven't come across anybody doing anything similar yet. So it's all like super early.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it's also the way that it works is down to like the sort of medium, because like, you know, in GitHub, it's the best example of a centralized one. Because well, now Microsoft's internal politics is running the interface. So like here, what wants to get made gets made because people make it. And then
and just proliferates
significantly
to anybody else, you know, that needs it. And then it just spreads to whoever else wants it, then it evolves, spreads back, like,
well, there's like a built-in impetus to explain itself so that it can propagate. Like the clearer it is, the more
yeah.
So like it has a built-in impetus for clear communication, which is like not true of some other types of organizations, you know.
Yes.
Like I really love this format of just like, our proposal is that we define a standard interface that anybody can adopt. It's so flexible.
Yeah.
Well, it's like got a built-in thing too. Like if you agree, do it.
Right.
You do it. It exists. Good work. We did it.
Yep.
So
and now anybody that wants to build something that posts to this has a format. Anybody that wants to build something that reads from this has a format as well.
Yeah.
And they're free to do whatever they want with that implementation. It's beautiful. Just it's all the data that's like organized in a way that's accessible to everybody.
It's like it's built on top of human beings doing what they do. Like, hey, yeah, you want to do this? I got it here. We'll just do this together. Just here's some rules. It's fine.
To do it like this, then we can do it together.
Yeah. Just language.
A bunch of games.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's interesting that the money game is the first game that gets invented in a way. It's like if thinking about these things as games, it's like, oh yeah, like okay, what is the game that we play most often on a day-to-day basis, and it is like this kind of money game, whether you think about it that way or not. And then what other games can be built on top of it is like what is downstream. I don't know. It's a little strange. Maybe that's not quite the right conception, but.
I think I see what you're saying. Like all the use cases that people talk about are almost entirely about money for the most part.
I think that the intelligence is built up the most in money. You have like the most psychological understanding, the most like trust games, the
biggest magnet
that have been developed, like social contracting, all of these things, and it's in the clearest language that we got, which is, you know, mathematics. Like money is you can quantify it. So
it's programmable, sort of like
it gets you through the door, and then
it's quantitative. There's also money in money, so you could throw money at it to explore.
It'll fund it. It'll
They're
be
just
alive.
like, fuck it, let's play with it. There's so much surplus of money right now. So
what's funny is that like right after money comes art, like all the NFT stuff like this, because they're like, oh, what's happening over here? I need to get, and I can do things.
they sort of go together, don't they?
Yeah.
They sort of go each other on, because usually the
patronage models and the creativity and
money's
artistry.
not smart usually. Like it doesn't know.
It quantifies well.
Yeah.
But you need creativity to know what to do with it.
Yeah.
So yeah, like the patterns that you're building, Shahruz, like, no, it's like this, and you don't have to pay for it. It's artistic, right? Like it has an understanding of the underlying like quantifiable concept. It's just being applied in human ways. I
also just want to make it really easy to use. Like
it's more fun that way.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Cool.
Like even this stuff, I'm always so excited to show how accessible it is relative to what I think people's imaginations of it is. Validity just sounds so hardcore. Like all of it. It sounds like only like the most like you need 20 years of experience. You need like a long beard and like not talk to anybody to be able to like it's none of that. It's like
this is clearer than JavaScript APIs. I mean, like this is honestly, it's easier to grok than like some of the stuff I run across for MDN for like sizing my dialog box on a site.
Yeah, I think the cost of all like crypto like did a disservice to itself on this front. You're writing
Yeah.
contracts that could move millions of dollars, you know.
Yeah.
Like it's just nonsense. Money
It's
is
like
not that
shipping
important.
around bits. That's it.
You know, it's just a way to transact things or whatever. So like,
Yeah.
yeah, it's lightweight. It's a way to play with money, which is cheap now, right? Like you can make it, you can change it, you know. So yeah, the stress around the contracting, I don't think is that big a deal. By the time it becomes a big deal, you have a whole fucking team around you, and you have a whole open internet that wants to help make it better. So
Yeah.
you don't have to do it by yourself. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. I don't know. This stuff is just like blowing my mind continuously. It's like more, it keeps becoming more and more a felt sense of like,
yeah,
I don't know, at least with Ethereum, maybe not with like Bitcoin and like more traditional, just like cryptocurrencies themselves, but like, holy shit, like we have a globally distributed computer that like, you know, tens of thousands, well, millions of people are paying attention to, and thousands of people are actually running nodes that are like actually doing these computations. And it's surprisingly easy to get this set up. And I'm very curious, once proof of stake comes online, that how many more people are going to be contributing to this computer. Because I'm running an Ethereum node right now, and it's pretty easy to set up. But I'm curious with proof of stake is like, I don't have 32 ETH to throw in.
Yeah.
So it's like, how can I still
pools.
contribute? Yeah, pools. And it's like, it's an interesting thing, but I don't mind running a Raspberry Pi to like help out. Like that costs me virtually nothing. But it is this like crazy, like distributed computer, but also, I don't know, I guess just database, which is kind of a fundamental problem, it seems like. It's very interesting.
Well, the thing that's cool. All right. So right now, what I just heard was you're like, you get how this thing works. It continues to sell itself because it's cool. Right. And then now you're like, I'm going to do some of the hardware stuff. Like it never occurred to me to do any of that. Like it's too much work. So plus I'm not in one place. So, but like so you're now self-selecting into hardware like dev effectively, right? Like, and so then a bunch of other people are going to do that. And then they're going to be like, wonder who else is doing that. And then you go and you look and you talk, and then it gets optimized, and then you make better. It's just such a good way of doing things. It's interest driven. Like, oh, there's something in this. I'll go play with it. There's an open invitation to do that.
It feels like how biological evolution works to some extent too. Like things just fall into the right place to improve the condition of the overall thing.
Exactly. Very niche-y.
Yes.
Not Nietzsche.
Nietzsche.
Should I check this code in?
Yeah, where did we land here? Like
Bit of a digression.
Yeah,
But a great one.
We're all drinking Kool-Aid together.
I mean, I can leave some of the stuff in if you guys want to play around with it. Should we have more of like sandbox sections in our repo?
One option is branches there. What sections are you thinking? Because the verify signature feels like it could definitely stay in for now, and like if we need to formalize it or clean it up later, definitely do that. But
well, I wonder if we just make like a subdirectory that's still accessible, that we just like put little snippets,
just a little lower stakes.
Yeah, that might be useful later on, but we're not putting it into like the front and center.
Yeah.
What should we call it?
I mean, I like sandbox, but playground.
Good with that.
Space.
Playbox. Sandbox seems fine.
Yeah.
All right. Seems like a consensus there. Cool. And then I'll just move this verify signature. Actually, no, we're going to need two sandbox filters, one inside the API. Because that route is a little bit more specific.
Yes.
And then make a copy of this. And clear this out again.
Something could be kind of like built with sand in the sandbox, and then people come in and like it, then you like build a cement one next, and then move it out of the sandbox.
Or a mold, so you can make
Yeah.
get real complex with the metaphor.
Cool. Okay, this should be working fine then.
Nice.
All right, I will commit this. What was our convention here again? Present tense?
Yep. Present tense.
Um,
Add signing and verification.
Cool.
Nice.
I'll push that up. Cool. That should be up on Git now. And then
Git
up
commit,
on,
add message.
oh wait, I didn't check these two. All right, now it should be up on Git.
Sweet.
Is there a good place to store or share the Solidity contract through? Is there some sort of Git time there, new repo, or move it into the repo?
Yeah, we can make a new repo with this. I mean, this I feel like we should rewrite and use OpenZeppelin.
Yeah.
I can copy this into something.
At the very least, yeah, just for Gawker. Maybe a gist file.
Smart. And pops this into Discord.
Yep, there's good.
Sweet.
Cool.
Contracts, doing it all.
Yeah. My brain is just about, it's like overflowing with information. I need to like lay down and process.
Well, where do your brains go next with this?
That's what I'm thinking. So integrated wallet, and then we wrote a contract for an ERC. Do we do ERC 721 and ERC 20?
Just ERC 721 right now.
Okay. So mapping storage on IPFS, right? Yeah, that makes sense.
So I guess like what I'm curious is like, for me, it's like what goes on the blockchain versus what goes on IPFS. And is it literally just the raw block content that goes on IPFS and everything else is going on the blockchain? And then we essentially like update the previous token ID or something like this? I'm just trying to imagine like how this begins to form where we can start querying it with the graph or something similar.
Yeah. I think the post type, like what's nice about IPFS is that if we have an individual block that's used as a dependency within posts, like if it's referenced from a bunch of other places.
Yep.
Each individual node, each like leaf, for example, doesn't need to be on chain. It just needs to be on IPFS.
Okay.
The things that should be on chain are the things that should be surface level queryable. Like a top level organization structure, because you can still query, what happens when you go down the tree and get into the individual blocks. Because the graph.com, like they're, I don't know if we talked about the CG now, we're talking about it a little bit today.
Oh yeah.
But this is a service that we should figure out at some point, where this is essentially just taking blockchain data and indexing it. So anytime there's a new post or an update, we can actually track that into a Postgres database that's like way more queryable. And it's also publicly queryable. So you get a free API endpoint that you can give to others that way.
Did not realize that. That's very nice.
But yeah, anyways, so on-chain high-level post types that seem like this should be an NFT level, to some extent.
I think one of my like more like fundamental questions maybe is on the front end side is, can blocks exist without being in a post, and can you like later on compose them with each other? And is it possible if the block itself is not on the blockchain, is just on IPFS, is that still effectively queryable, or does that need to be stored in some database somewhere else, like possibly externally, to really be able to like actually query, say, unlinked blocks in a way is like kind of how I imagine it. I don't know if that makes sense.
Yeah. Querying the blocks that are not yet on chain or are not referenced yet by anything on chain it would be tricky.
Yeah.
Because you would still have to store those references somewhere.
Right.
Which,
Could they basically just go to some very, very rinky dinky endpoint, and then that gets like fed into the graph somehow, like as an auxiliary indexing input? Or
no,
is
so
it
the
very
graph,
like
the graph is like deterministic, like
very
their
okay?
intent is to
Just
be
like,
secure. So
yeah.
So real quick, this case, like what is the case for this? Like how do you see that? These like sort of non-chained blocks.
Okay, so at least like how I'm imagining this is like kind of a base level building is like another way to kind of build up into a post or something like that. Is maybe initially I just submit a URL and that's a block. And then from the URL, maybe 20 days later, like someone else references it, and I can add that reference like into that block or to that block later on. And now does that become a post itself? Is like maybe now there's enough content for it to actually go onto the website. Whereas initially it's not really there to go onto the website. It's more like there in memory to say like, this is something that's floating around in the general space.
Staging.
Okay. Yeah. So I have this like sort of it's pre-publish, like a pre-publish workspace is this stuff, right? Like a model is like, you've got a bunch of stuff before it goes out to air or before you go to print or like in sort of media pipelining. You need a workable area before you commit it to the market, in the case now, but now it's the chain. So, and it's all of the like component pieces that would probably look like something, and you could eventually just do all of this stuff in public if it gets cheap enough or whatever.
Yeah.
Or there might be some alternate chain that you do this on or something like that. But it's effectively within the scope of a private environment, right? Like, so like it's authenticated to the squad that is working on this material or the swarm or the hive, whatever size of but it is private in that sense. And then once it has been manipulated and worked with, and there can be a bunch of tooling within that area, the workspace, to work with these things to get it to a point where you are pushing it out to whatever broader sphere can see it based on whatever. But
I feel like it's even less about the money and transaction costs there, and just more about, can I make a mess? Can I be very like open without having things committed to the world's largest supercomputer like network?
I mean, it's surprising fluidity of communication and movement of artifacts and creation of medias and all this stuff.
So you need to have it on chain in order for it to be queryable. Am I understanding that correctly or no?
To do it in a fully decentralized way where you're using the blockchain, you're using something like the graph. Yes, there are, ways of setting up servers that also manage like drafts or encrypted or private content as well. That's just like a stop kind of thing, which like I think is fine. Like a lot of services are, to be usable, they have to put in some of those things now as the ecosystem develops the solutions longer term.
Yeah,
like I think how do you draft posts is a problem that so many different application developers are going to run into within this stuff, that somebody is going to solve it mathematically and come up with some protocol or standard way of doing it.
Yep.
Yeah, there's like another like broader macro pattern here, which is like there is internal governance in like a DAO or a private space or a whatever entity that is producing things that will go on chain. And the rule set there is more, I don't know, it has some difference in like trust interactivity or something, right? And as you go out into the public, it changes to a different sort of broader, stronger, or like clearer trust model or something, or requiring like a much larger scale. So things need to be simplified, or I don't know if there's something there. So you interact with it differently inside versus outside. And so the publish event is conversion into the outside, like sort of model or something. I don't know if this makes sense, but this is how I'm
translation. No,
that makes sense.
It's an encoding. Like now it's immutable in some way, right?
So is there a level then before it goes on chain that is centralized based on the squad that we're talking about?
That's kind of what I'm getting. I mean, maybe literally handled by the squad's machines, because this doesn't need to be like performance rock solid. Like just needs to be, I mean, a machine, 2 for redundancy or whatever, but like and you know, it's reasonably trustworthy in the sense that like there could be a fire, so you only read like 1 redundancy level, and there could be like nice backup flows and stuff. But then that squad together creates that like first layer, and then that can then move out.
It's a local network, like and it connects to the internet, like implicitly, right? But
accessible anywhere on the internet, just with your private key, basically, as some sort of like, I mean, there's a potential here for like a virtual private network for some aspects of it, but I'm not even sure that's like really necessary. I think pure like based visibility might be enough for this.
So like the stack within one of these things. So we're talking about like the sort of area in which we're, and just pull me back down if I'm too broad right now, but like there's a local network, and within that local network, the types of things that happen within, like, you know, content sharing and publishing and all the relational stuff can exist within there, right? Like how does that permeate out into the like global network? Like what is the difference between, or if the question even makes sense? Like, you know, if we're building the local network as an instance of like something to do with the relational OS, because the data within that local network is being like defined, like files or artifacts are being defined by relationship, right? Like I maybe
say that again.
So I might be way too off track here.
No, I mean,
can you repeat it?
I kind of
I don't know if this makes sense, but John, this is reminding me of kind of how you have like a private Roam database or Obsidian database, but you kind of want to expose like external parts of it, but it's kind of one and the same whole. At least like that's kind of how I'm internally interpreting this, is like you have this like local instance of the relational OS, which is larger than the public set that is out there. I mean, whether that just be an encrypted set or something else, like it could theoretically all be public under your private key or something, but it's like you have these 2 instances, but one, like there's different permission levels for these different instances or sets of instances. Like a squad might have a different set of things it can access compared to completely private versus completely public. I don't know if that's like kind of the same like set, but that's kind of how I'm imagining what Dave is saying.
Yeah, it's kind of like anything within the local graph can reference outside things, but the outside things won't necessarily see that there's backlinks pointing to them. You can maybe just give them like raw yes, no data, like we are referencing this piece of content, but don't say where or from where or how. But it's kind of like you can always traverse outwards, but you can't necessarily get back in unless you were somehow connected to people that were along that path before.
So concentric circles.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Squad being bigger than public. Public can't see all that squad is, but squad can see everything that's public.
I
Obviously.
mean, my instinct there is to say smaller in some way, but neither smaller nor bigger feel like the like correct phrasing. It's more like within maybe or
Yeah, that metaphor actually would be good to pick at, because I my brain keeps sliding off of it. So like, what is the density of information? Like, is that what we're looking at? Like, so the density of information between members of a group, you know, and maybe that private circle offers depth that is not available to the public. So it's density.
Well,
Again, I don't know.
so what's available to the public is going to be something that is more structured in a way. Like it's something that the group like has agreed to push out. So it almost has more depth consolidated. So it has a density to it. But there's like a broader pool of information to pull from in the squad area. It's like less organized, less
Yeah, it's
Polished.
legible.
packaged. Yeah.
Like it has ability to the local group because there is shared languaging based on like,
Well, it's a different audience, right?
Yeah.
Because if the squad is effectively writing to itself, like we're writing to ourselves, that's different than publishing something for an audience outside of it.
Yeah.
Yes.
But
But three or what was that? Repeat that.
You need the first layer of the squad doing this kind of work, because to jump immediately to like a product, like a written product, visual, whatever it is, to an audience, like it gets muddled. Like in the creative process, like if you're trying to appease other people and you're not doing your own work, it gets hard. So the squad is the moat around that. Yeah.
It's like this whole emergence thing. At least that's what it's reminding me of, is like within the squad, you're letting things emerge and then it kind of like goes outwards, but it's not like the reverse where you're trying to like, well, you could be intentionally doing that, but it's like still the squad is like the originating.
Yeah.
Something about layers for me, where n number of squad members have looked over this internal communication that was like also target internal, but they can kind of be like, yeah, like this feels fine to release, and then it kind of just like gets opened in some sense for reading, maybe like annotation or something, but you don't necessarily get like the things that were made as derivatives of it. You don't necessarily get to see the things that went into it. You just get like that, like specific snapshot exposed. But
yeah, I think there can be.
But the question of
depending on like, you know, intent. So like in the case of like, you know, launching a ship, you know, it's a big ordeal. It's a big, you're going to put it into you're taking it from dry dock, it's done, and it's going to go in the ocean, it's going to float or not. You hit it with a bottle and everybody cheers. You know, there's like these kinds of events, or it's something that's like notes that you're taking daily that with somebody else, and you're putting it out, and there's no audience as such. You're not announcing it or launching it. You know?
Yeah, you're just opening it up
there,
for
like
serendipitous discovery and connection.
Yeah, versus a blog post versus a launch of a podcast or something like this, or you know, whatever.
So this is games then, because what you can do is take the primitives and basically program games. So like this game, this is a blog post game, this is a newsletter, whatever the hell, and in each game, like, so this is where we get into, you can create new games, but each game that is created has its own protocol then for how it moves within the system and out.
Yeah, I mean, if I'm hearing it, then it's kind of like each step in the game essentially determines what kind of inputs and outputs it's receiving and moving out. And so you can be like, the first step of this game is only going to be producing internal things and things that are not going to leave. But then we're going to take all of that, send it to the second, third, and by the fourth round, there's this implicit understanding that the outputs of this are actually going to go out into the broader sphere.
Yeah, so these types of patterns can be like sort of content games, or, you know, smart journals. communal thing. There's all kinds of stuff, magazines, like there, you know, media forms that don't exist yet effectively. And if you use it to do something like working in a group to like habituate like shared understanding, right? Like you can sort of program little games to like do sense making together, like on certain things or whatever, without having to do a bunch of logistics to coordinate everybody. You just show up, sign up, do, you know, it's again, fluidity of thought. Like it's a kind of, there's surveying functionalities here, this kind of stuff. So yeah. Okay, so yeah. Where do we come back to here?
Yeah, what's next?
Yeah, talking internal, external.
So
like,
the game builder is a protocol builder. And that's all fractal stuff too. So what you like, if you get bigger squads and maybe they're like, this is where using like, there's different terminology. So there could be like, if you had a, I don't know, you were growing something to the size, like a swarm to the size of like 1,000, 2,000, there might be like different subset groups that have different roles. And so you'd want to keep certain information like centralized or not centralized, but private, I guess, or
contained.
Yeah, and you can do that then if we build the structure once, you could, that's easy. Because this is just 2 layers, but I would imagine there's lots of different layers. That,
Right, it's fractal.
Yep.
Yeah.
That doesn't explain what we do next though.
well, so, like there's
I just had to get that out. I was like,
rough
I was
direction.
reading it and I was like, okay.
yeah, it's a bit ahead. Like, so printing something out in a list, like pulling back the blocks, or
Yeah,
this is the
something
simple
really
toy
simple.
junk that comes up for me. Like, if that moves it forward, or if there's more infrastructure stuff, I don't know.
Well, I guess the next step then, we need to figure out how we're doing our centralized squad stuff, right? Before we figure out what goes on chain, I would think.
So in other words, make a mess in the living room before inviting people in.
Sure.
Yeah.
What's the living room?
The space that we all share. And
okay.
I mean, to me, it kind of seems like it's going to feel like Discord, but less structured, more graphy, where you can kind of just be like posting things to streams, to tags, at people, at the whole group, just yourself. Like it's kind of like this just overlapping set of information flying around. Maybe there could be like some nodes that act as rails that then kind of give you some definition of like, this is a thing that will be going out later, or like this is a thing that some sort of like confidence significance interval notation. But
so
we have to build in the game structure into our living room or house or whatever before we invite other people in, because if we can get the game structure with primitives like sort of set up, other people can come in and play, and like there's no, we can leave it open right now, so there's sort of like an open play game, and then figure out how to solidify that, like, or make it more rigid. So like here's a specific game type built on top of that. So the beginning, like what I would visualize is just being able to do the basic primitive posting, however we want, like whatever viewpoint you want to put on that. And then the relating stuff, I don't know how that comes in. But that I would think would be part of this.
Yeah, I mean, we still have our context field in the whatchamacallit schema. That's our relating stuff. We haven't gotten too into that yet. I mean, so
that comes up now, I think.
Yeah.
I mean, first do like rebuild that sort of the schema, like bring it to life here, right?
Sure.
Whatever happened with that schema?
Well, we needed to get into code. We needed to have a play. Now we're doing that.
Now we got it. Yeah.
So
yeah, I think at least like does the schema, it's like, where does the schema live?
Yes. And like if we revisit and look at the schema now, does it still make sense? Based on been talking about and what we've built to sort of like house it.
I mean, it exists in a proposal. I mean, this is going back to, you
Yeah.
know, what Shahruz was showing, like the EIP thing.
Yeah, I mean, good.
Good. I was gonna say, I think like one place where it translates is actually on my headset.
We hit our AirPod battery.
That's usually our
Classic limitation.
Yeah.
Slow
Yep. Test. Can you hear us?
Yeah, one sec.
Nice.
There we go. Sorry about that.
Oh, good.
So one place where that translates is in the graph. One of the first things that you do is define a schema.
Cool.
Not
Yep.
sure where it is in here, but let me,
You can pull up cam.
yeah, you pull up in my example.
Oh, yeah. Seeing how you're using this for internet camera would be very, very helpful.
So these are the schemas that I defined for the camera so far. Film, photo, wallet film, which is basically just a connection. So I can say, here's how much film a certain wallet is holding. Transfer type is just an enumerated value. It's not its own schema. It's just a reference. And then transfer event, which just tracks who sent who what and what type transfer was it and how much of that thing did they send. So this is what's all queryable publicly. And it kind of defines the entirety of the protocol at this stage. So as things are written to the blockchain, these two files basically come up as event handlers. So when film is registered, this function runs and it creates a new film object, sets all the data, pulls in stuff from IPFS. That's where like a lot of the metadata is actually stored and will be in our case as well. And then there's just other functions here. So when a photo is posted, it does a new photo, associates it with the film, imports metadata from IPFS. And then all this becomes queryable publicly, where, I mean, you can think of how locked down like an Instagram API is, but here I can do like, you know, give me the most recent 50 photos, show me who owns it, who created it.
Wow.
Do interfaces on it. Yeah.
Like,
That's unreal.
Yeah, this is the level of play that's just crazy awesome.
Yeah.
support it, like basically Instagram would make this like they would fight you every step of the way if you
Yes.
figured a way of doing it. They would try so the graph
Here,
make this
yeah.
flow straightforward. We're like in the contract itself, it's just storing like this function, which is the main function for posting a photo, is essentially what we just wrote for honeycombs, just a little bit more, where it's withdrawing one film first, which is the step that's part of that protocol. But then it's just minting, it's using a counter, it's setting the token URI to the IPFS hash. Like this is exactly the same as what we just did. But these primitives can be translated and parsed into different things through the graph, where that's where like the shape of your data can be more, you know, what you want it to be. Whereas Solidity really tries to get you into like just an IPFS hash and a number that references it. Yeah. And then this like this photo posted event is what triggers the subgraph to say, hey, a photo just got posted. Let me go and parse all that data and store it into the queryable database.
How does the emit relative to the contract work? Who is listening and through what means?
So you can define events as like kind of generic things of like, there's an event photo posted, which will always have a creator address, a film index, and a photo index.
Yep.
And then, anywhere within the contract, you can call emit on that function, on that event name. And then where this goes is in like Explorer, basically anybody can query it. So if you have an Explorer, forget what, there we go. So this is the currently hosted internet camera contract. And under events, you can see like photo hosted. So you can see
Yeah.
a public list of
So it's almost like your internal server logs,
yeah. But the
but
graph
like
uses
usable by anybody. Yeah,
the graph uses the same mechanism
that's elegant.
as a way of triggering like more advanced kind of data storage and parsing. And
Why is this so good?
Yeah.
Who did this?
I think a lot of very smart people.
Yes.
But yeah, that's how all these things are working together, and that's why like the graph is kind of
Yeah,
like it's so cool that this can be used by anybody, and you can make this a public interface that anybody can then come and, you know, like any type of thing they can come and query for very quickly and easily.
that's amazing.
So we got to play with the graph and our current block schema and see like
Mhm.
where there's
Mhm.
room to wiggle.
Yeah.
It seems to me like all we really care about is like basically the contract we wrote in a way. Like at least like, that's like my initial thought is we already have the IPFS hash. We have who created it. And then that itself, like once we go to the IPFS data, it should have the data, the context, the timestamp, and like the parent. And from there, you should be able to reference any other block effectively, right? Or you'd be able to at least query for all the blocks.
Mhm.
But I guess like that could be a lot of overhead on the blockchain itself, or cost.
Could be, although with Polygon, like I think a lot of this
Yeah.
stuff is so negligible.
Which would be sweet.
That like one mechanism that I'm thinking about for camera is because the graph is like a manual process where I'm writing these functions. I can say, you know, if it has a certain flag that's like draft, just like cancel out. Don't do film.new or photo.new or post.new or whatever. Just like don't index it yet. So anybody using the APIs won't be able to pull it in. It'll still be public. It'll still be on the chain, which is maybe fine if the costs are negligible, but it's just not surfaced through the API yet. So I'm like considering that for like, is that like a nice stopgap for like what a private film roll would be? Is just like an unlisted film roll.
Mhm.
Does that potentially, you know, get into problem areas where people don't know exactly what that means and then end up regretting what they post, and how do you best avoid that?
Yeah.
I'm still thinking through some of those things, but
It's a one-way street on that, right?
what was that?
It's a one-way street on that. Like it's private. Yeah.
But
Wait, can you
there's something-
elaborate a little bit more on that? I was just like, or like the use case.
So like, let's say somebody has like a wedding or a party or something where it's like maybe okay that the photos are public, but they don't necessarily, like I've got an Explorer on the current version of the website. Somebody posted some food.
Nice.
So like maybe somebody doesn't want their event photos to show up like in the film category on this page, but they still want to use it. They don't mind that it's public or that it's out there. They just don't necessarily want it like in everybody's kind of view.
Yeah, you don't want to broadcast. You just want to
Yeah.
like make accessible.
Yeah. So I think like what a flag there would be, this is like the film creation process right now, but a flag there could be like, you know, unlisted here. And then that just sets some metadata. And then within the graph, it's just saying, you know, if that is true, skip this one.
Yep.
The only question, given that everything here is deployed on chain and accessible, can somebody write the graph definition to parse for unlisted?
Yep. So they're still always at risk. The idea, I think, is that like, I'm going to ship an SDK that has the official hosted graph instance in there. And the expectation is that people will hopefully be using that SDK unless they intentionally override the graph URL that they want to hit because they're running a separate instance. But I think like my view on that right now is like provide good defaults so that whatever propagates, whatever becomes used by the most people follows the standards of the protocol that people are buying into essentially.
Yeah.
There's risk everywhere, and like all this needs to be gone through and debated, and
I guess the only question I'm trying to understand is if somebody generates some film that's totally unlisted and shares it between people that they trust, where is the exposure happening? And it's not shared from that circle.
Within like a block explorer, you'll be able to see these kind of events still.
Yep.
Kind of no matter what.
Yeah. Okay. So just purely the output from the internet camera solidity contract, basically.
Yeah. It's not OpenSea. One sec.
I'm curious, like, is it possible, like, to just rely on encryption and say, like, here's one private key for all this data, and even though like it might be publicly accessible, is like you just can't see the actual contents of it, and then trust that the people who are owning the private key are passing it around correctly? I don't know if like that totally makes sense, or if there's a different, better way to do it, or through like, yeah, I don't know, some other method.
That makes sense. I think like the passing around of a private key could just be
It's
a
tough.
tedious and risky thing, because
Yes.
it's also not something you'll be able to retract.
Yes, true.
Right.
Because
Right.
if that private key leaks, that it's not changeable. It's
all
now public.
But I mean, if we're going with the film metaphor, that is also applicable to film.
Yeah.
Once it's gone, it is gone. Like anybody has access. It's not encrypted by default. I mean, here you're essentially saying there's a version of film that is encrypted, which is, I think, an improvement.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, it's, you know, it's a new medium, so like part of there's like risk involved as part of the art of
No.
the thing. So like you can play with that. Like if you want something to be totally private and no one ever sees it, then don't put it anywhere.
Yeah.
True.
Yeah, I think
Or use
leaning into
something
the
else, right? Like, but
public aspect of this.
yeah, I mean, I like the unlisted thing, and then there's this subculture, and there's all kinds of crazy shit you could do with this, right? And then you could also, because most people aren't going to be looking for it, assume certain types of like sharing are fine, because if it ever does get it out, that's interesting, but like
Yeah.
it's unlikely, you know. There's all these sort of, I don't know if that's making any sense as how I'm thinking about it.
So we have to come up with a game to play. That's how we get out of every pickle that we get into. So I think
Sounds like it.
I think the game is we have to figure out our first post that would be on chain, and we need to brainstorm a way to like what is going to be in that post. Not that doesn't need to be on chain, so we need to be using the blocks. Yeah.
So create a block
Mhm.
mechanism
Create a way like
or
to
input
brainstorm.
mechanism.
Yeah, well, if we can input information into like our text box, right?
Sure.
Whatever that is, text, images, like we need to start brainstorming, like, and we need to figure out what would we want to post? Like, what would our first post be? This is all part of the game though.
Sure.
Yeah, I mean,
Hello world.
one element of this that I kind of see is role playing it within like one Discord channel that then becomes like this stream of blocks, but none of that's getting published anyway. But if we contain all of the discussion within that one channel, all the references and all of us are in it, and we can come up with something that we output from that conversation. Is that basically a game in some way?
We do the first phase. Why not use what we built though with the
I guess my worry is we have considerably more to build to query and display past information, which I mean it's definitely doable, I guess. But I guess my thinking is like if we need a playground that's off chain, then can we like just role play it?
but
Well,
then
I guess
part of
I
what
was
we
just gonna say,
figure out is moving off to on, right? So it'd be a multi-phase game, like the first phase being create the off-chain playground, which is
Mhm.
basically our text box. We need to up the ante on that so it can take in more than just text. And then there's like right now we can just have one stream, reverse chronological, or like keep it real
Buzzard.
simple and
Okay.
only use it for the purposes of brainstorming the first post or whatever. Like we can.
So in other words, by doing it this way, we have everything is native, a native block,
Yes.
but only some of them
Yes.
will make it out of that.
And
draft.
then that's like the next phase. How do we select ones that we want to make it out? How, and then
Mhm.
what do we run into? Like, how do we
Mhm.
want to be querying and looking at this? Because it'll
Yeah,
run
we'll feel it. I mean, yeah, I'm already imagining like what is a rephrasing of a block that multiple people alike, and then
Yep.
where does it fit next to the other rephrased thing? Okay, yeah, this is making sense.
We'll have to
And
we'll have to simplify things. We'll probably end up doing something like insanely simple for the first post, just for the purposes of like pushing it out the door. And then
yeah, simple is good.
I mean, whatever it looks like on chain is going to be kind of funny because it's going to be like,
Yeah.
took this long and it looks like nothing.
I mean, so are we trying to come up with a simplistic formula for a post that we can build towards?
Not yet. I think we're just figuring out what is the game is create a playground.
Okay.
An off-chain playground.
Yeah.
Based on the previous, like the text input thing. We've got that takes into account the block schema.
Okay, what's the architecture of our playground? What does a playground need?
I mean, we might need another session to come up to build this game because we're sort of like, there's like a bunch of things are collapsing and folding on itself right now.
No. No.
So it doesn't seem like we have like a simple let's do it right now game. We have a let's get together and think about a playground.
Yeah.
And then
an
come up with
off-chain playground that uses the block schema. And we can update all of this. Like if the block schema needs to be updated, that's fine. If the content
because we're not
off-chain needs to be updated, that's like we'll just. But that seems to be, I don't know.
It decouples them. It like kind of gives us a design fiction-y way to build what the actual version is going to be, kind of. I'm imagining. I wonder if like we could either use the graph query like during the game and literally like have everybody come up with the queries that they want. Wondering how much data you can pull out of each block, or do we just try to reconstruct like a very lightweight version of this view without even?
I mean, I guess like this is a pretty standard like GraphQL interface. Like it wouldn't be the biggest deal to just start up a GraphQL server and be able to query into it with a Postgres backend. Like that's like pretty standard. Like if you want to do it like Web 2.0 way, at least like to say like this is off chain, but we have a Web 2.0 way of saying like, okay, our data is just going to go
to a Web 3 way of doing it. We're just essentially cutting out the in-between process to get it there for now.
Potentially, yeah.
So can you explain that? Like there's a
though I guess like my question is like, is it worth doing that, or do we have the knowledge to just put it on a testnet and just directly use it on the testnet?
Potentially. I feel like knowledge, yes, but we don't. But we want to play with it ambiguous more. Questions of like schema and which it's like, is there a way of essentially having people rewrite the schema as we're playing the game, and multiple schemas coexist, and can they coexist, and can people query each other's schemas without fully knowing what everybody else is doing?
I mean, we could start with the one that we have. What is nice about the contracts is that like there's no schema here. It's just in the IPFS hash, which can
Yep.
contain whatever evolving schema that we like. It's just a string pointing to the IPFS thing that can be anything. So if the schema evolves, that should be fine. And then what we can do is with the graph, you can keep updating this, and it'll go back in time and fix everything from the past based on your updates. So the graph, unlike Solidity, is actually really easy to upgrade. So like if metadata changes, if you have like new fields that you didn't have earlier, popping that into the graph is like very easy, and you can deploy it in seconds. So evolving
it's like
schemas is relatively straightforward. Sorry.
Oh, no, sorry for cutting off. I was just going to say, it seems like, I mean, the graph is effectively like off chain as it is, and IPFS is off chain as it is. And the bookkeeping that's on chain is like this very like minimal set, like you're saying, is just a address and a pointer to an IPFS link. And I'm guessing what you're saying with the schema being able to be updated is if you add new fields or subtract fields, I guess you just set a default value and it'll kind of go update and set the default value for all the previous ones or something like that.
Yep, or like null or undefined if it's an optional thing. Yeah.
Okay.
So the graph is not, it's sort of like very fine to be downstream of everything.
Yeah.
And it's just not like really blocking future changes.
Yeah.
That's nice.
Yeah, I guess ultimately I'm saying is like the surface area in whatever the final version of this looks like can be thin enough that it doesn't need to be rethought necessarily. Like there's something more fundamental would have to change for this to need to be changed as well, I think. I don't know if that's what we were even talking about. Sorry.
Yeah.
No, I think so.
Pre what is on the screen right now.
Yeah, pre-Solidity.
Which makes sense because once you get into Solidity, this is on chain. That's formalized basically.
Yeah.
We're gonna alter that, like the contract language, way less, and like how that works way less often than we would the games.
Yes.
Yep.
Certainly.
Games all happen pre-chain or off-chain, pre-publish, however you wanna. Yeah.
Yeah, the culmination of a game, the simplest one can be a post, which goes through a Solidity contract and on chain.
Yeah, but
So
we don't even have to worry about that transition yet. We're
just in the thinking about how
Yes.
the pre-chain works. There is the
there's a
process that
handoff
we're
to,
so it is an organizing function for the pre or the off-chain stuff.
Yeah, the graph, IPFS. What else is in this like sandbox that we're building here? Is that all we need?
The rest of the site UI to conform to our schema. A couple more text boxes, whatever else we need there.
Yeah.
Yep. One quick question that I'm still a little hazy on. The graph is able to look at a chain that only has an IPFS destination target hash and derive additional information from that.
Yeah.
By doing sub queries essentially that like pull out stuff from the IPFS content.
Yep. So for example, I'm pulling in metadata from the IP, like literally the IPFS hash here. And then it's like very safely doing, get the name of the photo, get the description, get the image URL, get the width, get the height. So it's able to pull in any arbitrary data from IPFS.
Yep.
Yeah. And then I think, that's pretty much complete list.
Yeah. Okay, that's fine then. Okay.
So where are we at? Sorry.
Yeah, no, we're like part of where I was at was we'll figure this out next week, but we're figuring it out right now.
yeah, basically.
I think we're just making sure we're in the same
Yeah.
arena because Yeah, I mean, if people want to sort of brainstorm and like share thoughts for like next step, like what would inform the game, like I don't know if that's helpful. I don't know, but it doesn't seem like what we're talking about here is too complicated.
You were kind of choppy.
Can you hear me now?
Yep, coming through. It looks a little better. Give it another couple seconds.
Sure.
All right, y'all are moving around now.
Stop. Oh yeah, you're not supposed to move because the algorithm. No, still bad.
One sec.
Still bad. I heard that, but
We'll try and switch networks.
Can also close our video.
sketching this out to make sure it fits into my brain because this is somewhat but shit.
About now.
Yep.
I heard that. Yep.
Hear me now?
Sound good.
All right.
Yeah, Kristen, the last sort of thing I heard you was like proposals around this game, but a pretty simple service area.
Yeah, well, what I'm wondering is if it helps people to, in between now and whenever we meet next, to just jot down like what you think is going on and like where we think we're playing, just so we can sort of like triangulate. Because I'm obviously the least technical, but the way that I'm understanding what's going on, it doesn't seem that it's too complex. It's just we need to get on the same page.
Sure.
Yeah, we just covered a
Sounds
shit
right.
round. So
Yeah.
probably just need to zero out our brains and then come back fresh.
Yeah.
And then, yeah, I could even do with watching this again.
Because we're zoomed out now, like we just like we're jumping around a lot, so we just went like super deep as far as the
We're like looking at XORs.
which is cool. But now we're like, okay, zoom out, go somewhere else and like take a more surface level look. Yeah.
No, I definitely agree. And I think whatever sort of thing of like descriptions that we all create, it's going to be very helpful for everybody because it's just going to be like 5 different perspectives on what the fuck just happened.
So much ground to cover.
Yeah.
Don't focus less on recapping. I think focus more on like, although that's also I think very welcome. But yeah, what are we sort of proposing here, and how do we do it?
Yep. I think
Put
that's
that
a
in
fun
next
game.
block or whatever.
Yeah, you can drop it next squawk. When do we want to
Squawk
next? Yeah.
Next week.
I think the same time next week is good for me, but
So
pretty flexible otherwise.
Works on our end.
We'll be on DSL.
nice.
So we'll see how that goes.
Another constraint is whatever this block publishing system is needs to run on DSL. Be a nice.
I mean, unless we want to meet sooner, I don't know what people think about that though.
I'd be down for that.
Wait, say that again. Sorry.
If we want to meet sooner.
I'm also fine with that. I would
Friday?
Everybody go away for 2 hours.
Take
Take a nap.
Tempting.
Monster energy drink.
Yeah.
Friday works. I mean, we don't have to push it, but.
No, I definitely like the idea because I feel like last Friday I had a weekend can be very, very long and a lot of things can fall out of my brain weekend.
Yeah.
So if I can kind of keep like looking at this throughout the week and then Friday we just all come together, and I mean, I like the timeliness of that.
Cool.
What time? Afternoon or?
I think like similar time, maybe minus back by 1 hour kind of makes sense.
Yeah.
2 p.m. Pacific?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that works.
Fantastic.
All right. Well, there's all that then.
So are we planning on like just kind of coming next time prepared to like, are we sharing a document or something, or
Whatever
Is
you
there-
want. Like, I think this is more informal, like just what you think the next game, like what you envision the like play space. And I'll write down kind of summarizing this and just pop it in.
Yeah. So I guess either the content itself or a URL to the content into next squawk.
Are we black boxing this, or are we just?
No.
Yeah, we're just
Yeah, I
tossing.
think leave it open for.
Got it.
Yep.
Yeah. We're reconnoitering.
Just making sure.
Yeah.
I understand.
It's an informal.
Yeah, I'm starting to feel like the difference in the cases where we would want a black box. Like it feels like you can kind of like you're funneling serendipity in different ways with like openness versus like compressing and then like exploding.
Yeah,
I'm wondering if there's.
Yeah, like right now we're all holding pieces of the thing.
Yeah, and I think because we're pretty disparate right now and we're going to be in different places, like I don't know, this is like one of those times where there's like no way we'll have group think. I mean,
no, we don't know.
maybe
We don't have a group brain yet.
EJ and Shahruz more and John, like you guys might, but like I don't know, it just feels like it's going to be varied. So
I don't know. Yeah, I feel like I'm floating off in some atmosphere level where I'm just like I have no idea what I'm looking at, but this is it. So very curious. Yeah.
I apologize. You guys also just got like 6 months of stuff condensed into like 2 hours. It's going to be very dense and like
it was amazing. Like freaking incredible. I'm definitely gonna send this video to a few friends. Just like yeah.
Yeah.
Here, blow your brain.
Because it's like trying to find all these pieces apart from each other without the picture of like what you're trying to build. Because you just sort of do one or the other. You can be like, I'm learning all this stuff, but I don't know where I'm putting it. Or I'm trying to build this thing, but I don't know where all the pieces are. When you have them like side by side, you just see the components and the oh my god, it's like so much clearer. It's really cool.
Thanks.
Yeah.
So thanks for doing 6 months of work and then giving us
Yeah.
I'm always so excited to like catch people up on this stuff because it's easy once you're onboarded a little bit relative to it. Yeah.
Well, then you get to move it forward too, because you get more people playing in the same space.
Totally.
Yeah.
All right. So one last thing, so I don't forget. We talked to Farzad Ban, who is a friend of ours. Dave's known him for a long time. I don't know if you want to tee them up a little bit, just briefly on what he'd been working on that sounds similar to like knowledge.
Don't remember. So, he was doing, so he runs a agency and they see a lot of like inbound, so like an agency that does like product design, particularly for, I don't know, all kinds of people. And so he gets a lot of inbound on what is sort of popping off as far as being built, sort of loose description. And he had worked on at least 2 like tools for thought things. One was a browser type thing. I think it was like somebody's like, I believe like former tech person or something, maybe with a decent amount of money, who was like trying to build out like a new style of browsing that has like that stigmergy, like history based on where you've come from. And so it's sort of he started building out design patterns for that and like a browsing first view based interface. I think they got through most of that project, but maybe there was some miscommunication stuff. And then he built some other thing that was related, like some note-taking database, who knows, whatever. So he's also been doing like, he has a huge stable of like product designers that work with him in his agency. And we have been talking sort of as a group, the 3 of us, just around styles of work and these kinds of things. And he mentioned that he might want to pop in, or we try to do a design jam or something like this where we can maybe encode some of this, because his like UI patterning stuff is significantly warmer than mine. Like he has been pumping out a ton of this. So
yeah, he's warmer in the like pixels. Like
Yeah,
he's like
big
on
time.
Figma. Where like I see Dave more in the like strategic, like how the thing works. And they
I guess.
are very similar.
Yeah.
So like I don't know, there's something there. So I don't know when we would get into that, but we were thinking of inviting Farzad in for some kind of design jam session. I think
Yeah.
it feels like it's like
We're a ways
it
off.
felt like we were getting close at one point during the call, and then we went away from it. So like I don't know. It feels like they're at some point here adding some UI layering just so it's easier to understand what we're doing will be helpful.
Yeah, that sounds
playing with
awesome.
metaphors, or like getting another UI brain in here, because I have a lot of the ponder stuff just pops up all the time. So let's get some more thinking, and then we can maybe multi-perspectival that motherfucker.
Yeah.
Sorry. The first word we've had in the videos. Explicit.
Yes, we could have ratings. Yeah, I mean, are you imagining this might be for Friday, or maybe like
no.
call, or totally independently?
I just want to get it out there as an introduction point, so you guys are aware we're thinking about that. And then I think for that session, my sister is a weird person. She like has a like interesting background. Like she used to work in energy. Like she does operations basically.
Real estate and oil.
Yeah, she came from oil and then went into real estate. She's quickly learning that when she works for existing like big systems, like institutional, like I don't know, civilization stuff that is out there now, she gets bored quickly because she figures it out, and then she's like, okay, what next? So she's asking questions about design. She's curious what we're doing. So she might sit in because she's interested, and she might be an interesting person to have as kind of an outside looking in. So we'll see. We're not quite sure where to fit her, but I don't know.
What's happening here is the natural interest for that Twitch thing is showing up. So like, and then in particular, different people coming in to play
from very different sides,
sort of pick up the pattern or whatever.
Yes.
Yeah. So that, I don't know. I think that's good.
Yeah, she had been following up on buzzard.life. She's like, I check on your website every now and then to see what's going on. She's like, it looks like you're playing a game. And I was like, wow, you might be the only person.
There's a few, but it's a very short list. She's one of them. I guess, in that vein, I had a call a week and a half ago with Aslan, and he's digging right in this space. Seems ripe for some sort of group call.
And Wayway.
Yeah.
So we've got there's a design thing that's like, I mean, the designers are starting to get into what we're doing. Like they want to talk. So I don't know. Yeah, I guess I'm just bringing it up because
I mean, that's
when we layer in design, or maybe that's like another conversation outside of this with a broader group. And I don't know what we would be presenting. So let's leave it for now, but it feels like popping up.
Yeah, I mean, maybe we create a new channel that's sort of just like outside interest or outside connections or something like that, where we can just sort of start pooling people that feel like they're like having a buzzard squawk with them would be fun for everybody.
Yeah, maybe that's.
I think that would be great. I know Phil has interest as well.
I imagine
this Thursday, and I already know he's going to be very interested.
Yep. Phil would be good to pull in because he's doing crypto stuff, right? Not like just blockchain and whatnot.
Yeah, I think he's working on at 0x right now or something like this.
Well, probably maybe what's happening is like we're gonna get working groups or something. I don't know. Like, but there's something having to do with crypto and like the economy and like treasury stuff. Like that would be nice to start jamming on. And I see overlap here with what Shahruz is doing. Like Shahruz, if you need help with the DAO, like social structure, like that would be fun to brainstorm on. Yeah.
Anytime you put together a group on that, I want to hang out. Like, because I don't even know how to think about it precisely yet. Like, but I think about it all the time.
Yeah, we talked to a designer, Eli.
Yeah, Eli Russo.
Who worked for Yeah, Cash.
he's been at Cash. He just left. He's been playing around in crypto. I feel we know similar people, Shahruz.
But Eli, one of the things that was the most interesting to him was how do you get a group of people to work together with the money component layered on top? So this keeps coming up where people are just like, what the fuck? Like, what do you do?
Mhm.
So I don't know, there's enough people that are interested. I mean, this could be another sort of blog club type thing where we have some sort of API with the outside world, like, hey, we're playing in this space. We don't know what to do here. Come talk to us, like with us about that. We don't have answers, but we all have the answer if we get together, kind of thing.
Yeah. Yep. And I'm starting to feel a purely like, not I guess nothing is purely in one side or the other, but kind of a technical blog club jam where like I can just get like you just get a room full of people to like bounce around ideas and maybe reflect on some of the stuff and predict, and like kind of can happen parallel and then things can connect too, but it's a little different structure than a blog club, but I think just as like fresh and interesting.
I mean, some of these things seem like they're a good fit for like the calendar structure or something, right? Like if we just want to start thinking, there's blocks, and then there might be like, you know, events or like working sessions or
yeah, I wrote down chats, but yeah, some sort of cool.
Yeah, I like for the DAO stuff, like y'all seem like very helpful in that sense too, to talk about, and like that would be great to just talk with all of you as well, and then anybody else that's interested.
Anytime.
Yeah, because I've been heads down building, kind of like avoiding the DAO problem, because at first I was really excited about it, and then I realized like, oh no, this is gonna be really hard.
Yeah,
you gotta think through everything. Gotta like you know, stress test every single possible variation on it and account for all these sorts of things. So then I went to my comfort zone, which is building, and then I got to get out of that if this is going to go the way I want it to.
Yeah, totally. I just want to play with this stuff. So the DAO organizational, all that stuff, and then like there are people that each person we're talking to, like they have these studios and they're trying to figure, or groups of friends. So there's a group of people out here who want to poke into this. So.
And at least one of us will at some point be like, I know someone that built something already that can come be like, here's what I learned and ran into, like, you know, a million. Hurdles.
DAO working group is a good one.
Yep.
You know who I know who might be good for that is my friend Rayhan, who is I think community manager for FWV.
Okay.
But he's been around for he's been a part of Friends with Benefits, the Token Gate Discord. He's been involved in that for a very long time. So he's one of the first people I hit up for DAO advice. And he gave some basic stuff, but I think digging deeper with him would probably be good and maybe helpful or interesting for all of you as well.
Yeah. Totally.
By all means.
Awesome.
Yeah, I'm talking to Mike Bodge on Thursday. They're launching all kinds of crazy shit right now, I guess. So maybe I'm talking to him on Thursday.
And he's the product designer,
creative director. I don't,
something. Okay.
I don't know what you call it, the actual role, but
they've been moving quick once he joined though. Like they're already shipping like multiple things. It's amazing.
He hustles, that dude.
He's in Portland too.
Yeah.
So we might end up meeting up with him at some point. Yeah.
Nice.
Cool. Any more names to drop?
I mean, 3 hours in, I think it's probably time to call it.
Is that it?
I think so.
I feel like 2 hours. I mean,
no.
Physically it does.
Yeah. I mean, there is a world where I'd be down to do this on a Saturday morning. So I'm just like fully awake and fresh and just, not saying all day Saturday, but like 9 a.m. Saturday caffeinated John is a little different from Monday, 5 p.m. John.
Well, whole calendar to fill out now, so.
Yes.
Like every time we talk to Farzad, he's in Bangkok. We talk like first thing in the morning for us, like around, 9 a.m. And he's like, what the hell? He's like, why don't we fix it? Because it's like 1 a.m. or like midnight. But he keeps weird hours. So he's just like, I didn't sleep well tonight. We can't do it this time. But it'll be, we're curious if it'll just change the entire like felt sense of the
It
conversation.
very well
In
might.
the evening and he's in the morning. Yeah.
He'll get to do all the talking. Because usually it's me like pounding caffeine, like, what's up? How's it going? This is the way it is.
Yeah.
Cool.
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 Thanks for driving, Cruz.
Yeah.
Yes.
Thanks for
Thank
download.
you. Thank you.
Drop of knowledge.
Yeah.
See you Friday.
Alrighty.
Yeah.
All right. Bye.
Bye.